If you've ever stayed silent to avoid seeming needy, laughed at something when it actually hurt, or told yourself you were cool with it just to keep someone around, this episode is for you. I spent years trying to be the cool girl in relationships, the one who never made a fuss, never asked for too much, and was always chill. But the truth? I was just abandoning myself over and over again and calling it love. Welcome to Unwind, the podcast that helps you get out of your head and back into your heart. I'm your host, Blair Nicole, and I'm a PhD candidate in psychology, former trauma therapist, and self-compassion coach. This is your space to slow down, tune in, and rewrite the stories that are no longer serving you. So, for years, my default persona in relationships was the chill girl. He canceled plans last minute. I'm cool with it. He barely texted back. It's all good. Multiple partners who had porn addictions that were destructive to our relationship. Yeah, still no problem. But inside, I was hurt. I was confused. And I was trying so hard to convince myself that none of it was a big deal because I didn't want to be that girl. You know the one I'm talking about. The jealous one, the needy one, the high maintenance, over emotional, controlling one. We get so many messages as women that tell us if we're upset, we're crazy. If we have needs, we're too much. If we set a boundary, we're manipulative or high maintenance. So eventually, for so many of us, we just stop. We contort ourselves. We stop expressing what we feel. We downplay the things that bother us. We become the chill girl, the one who's fine with anything, never gets mad, and never needs too much. We become ultra independent, and we think that if we just take care of ourselves and do everything for ourselves, that maybe we won't need so much from everyone else. And we truly believe that if we do these things, we'll be loved. At least that's how it felt for me. And when I'm talking about this, I'm using the examples of how this showed up in my romantic relationships, but it's a dynamic that really can play out anywhere. Family relationships, friendships, work colleagues. Romantic relationships seem to be where people do this most often, and that's definitely where it came up the most for me, but it's certainly not just in those relationships. So if you're noticing any of these people-pleasing tendencies in your other relationships, what I'm saying here is still totally relevant. I thought that if I was cool enough, relaxed enough, easygoing enough, maybe someone would finally see my value and treat me the way I deserved to be treated. But what actually happened was the opposite. I kept attracting relationships where my needs were not even considered, where there was no effort, where my boundaries were walked all over time and time again. And I could not understand why. The truth is, I was abandoning myself. Understandably, that's what I'd been taught to do. But I was abandoning myself and then wondering why everyone else was as well. Then I would suppress my resentment and convince myself it wasn't a big deal and try to act like everything was fine because it felt safer than facing the fear that maybe I would be rejected or abandoned if I asked for more. And here's the really tricky, painful part. There is some wisdom in that. Sometimes when I spoke up, I was rejected. I was called jealous, controlling, too much. So I would crawl right back into the chill girl shell and tell myself I was fine again. Because the truth is, some people won't be capable of treating you well. Some people will call you crazy and won't want to treat you respectfully or follow boundaries. And that really hurts to acknowledge. But those aren't your people. And contorting ourselves to make them happy will not ever get us what we need and deserve. At some point along the way, I finally realized this wasn't about me just having a laid-back personality. I actually don't have a laid-back personality. It was a trauma response called fawning. And it taught me to stay small, agreeable, and unbothered because it felt safer. Fight, flight, freeze, and fawn are all trauma responses in our nervous system. And most people talk about the first three, but fawning, which is people pleasing to stay safe or avoid conflict, is often overlooked, even though it is very common in relationships, especially for women. Being chill wasn't keeping me safe, it was keeping me lonely and resentful. I didn't feel connected. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel respected. I didn't feel any of the safety I thought it would bring me. And I wish I could say that I had this beautiful moment of clarity where everything changed overnight, but it wasn't like that. It took me being in yet another relationship where the boundary violations were so bad and so frequent, I couldn't ignore them anymore. I hit a wall, and it became really clear that it was costing me everything. I knew something had to change, but I didn't know how. I had never been taught to speak up for myself, not in any sort of meaningful way. I never had been taught how to set boundaries or ask for what I needed. So that's what we'll talk about in part two: how to start undoing this pattern in small, non judgmental ways, and how to reclaim the parts of you that learn to stay silent just to feel loved. If you're tired of feeling insecure or like you're never good enough, especially in love and relationships, this is for you. Becoming the love of your life is a self paced course designed to help you stop chasing love and validation from people who can't give it to you and start building real self acceptance, confidence, and self love from within. You'll learn how to break the cycle of insecurity and finally feel safe, accepted, and good enough from the inside out. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about realizing there was never anything wrong with you to begin with. Learn more at blairnicole.blog/coaching or click the link in the show notes. So maybe you're listening to this and thinking, damn, this is me. And if that's you, I see you. Before we go any further, let's just get one thing straight. There is nothing wrong with you for adapting in this way. You weren't being weak. You were being smart. You were surviving. You learned to be accommodating, low maintenance, and flexible just like I did, because at some point it felt safer than being real. It totally makes sense. That said, if this pattern is keeping you stuck, it might be time to try something different. So here's what I recommend. Here's 4 small but powerful steps you can start taking today to shift this dynamic in a sustainable way. Step 1, just notice the pattern without judgment. So instead of jumping into fix-it mode or trying to force yourself to change, simply notice when the pattern is showing up. When do you bite your tongue? When do you shrink your needs or talk yourself out of saying something? When do you act cool with things that you might not actually be cool with? You don't need to analyze it just yet or fix anything, just start to notice it happening. Start to realize where you might not actually be cool with everything, even if you've convinced yourself otherwise. That awareness alone is so powerful, and it's the building blocks of everything else you're going to do after this. Step 2, get curious about the part of you that's people-pleasing. So once you're aware of the pattern and can see where it's showing up, that maybe you're not so cool with everything after all, then you can start to get curious about it. What is this part of you trying to protect? How long have you felt that way? What are you afraid might happen if you did speak up? This isn't about blaming yourself or fixing anything right now. It's just about understanding. Because the part of you that's trying to be cool is probably doing it to avoid abandonment, rejection, or being labeled as too much. And that fear came from somewhere. So if we start to listen to ourselves, we can start to understand and show up in a new way. Step 3, ask yourself what you actually need. And here's where you start being really honest with yourself, at least. What are you really wanting in your relationships? What needs have you been minimizing or pushing down? You don't have to say them to anyone just yet, but naming your own needs, just privately to yourself or maybe in a journal, is a huge first step. Because the truth is, you do have needs. Everyone does. And pretending you don't won't make them go away. It just disconnects you from yourself and builds resentment. So what do you actually want in relationships that you're afraid to admit? Start by admitting it to yourself. Step 4, Practice this in tiny, manageable ways. Embarking on this process doesn't have to be a massive overnight change. And honestly, it shouldn't be. I know that once we start to see the light, we want things to change right away, which totally makes sense. I definitely fell into that pattern. But radical changes often lead to burnout. And then we retreat back into old patterns, which isn't sustainable. So start small instead. Maybe say no to one little thing that doesn't feel aligned. Maybe ask for something that feels low stakes but still important. Or set one small boundary that supports your emotional well being. Then pay attention to what comes up for you. Maybe it's guilt, maybe it's relief, maybe it's both. Whatever it is, it's information. And taking these small steps and noticing how you feel afterward are where healing really begins. If any of this is clicking, this is exactly the kind of work we go deep into inside my course, Becoming the Love of Your Life. We'll really unpack the deeper fears behind people pleasing, walk you through how to meet your own needs without shame, and learn how to do things like set boundaries. So you can learn more about that in the show notes if it sounds interesting to you. But for now, just remember, being the chill girl might look effortless on the outside, but if it's costing you your peace, your needs, or your self-worth, it is not worth the performance. You are allowed to be loved as your full self. You are allowed to take up space, and you don't have to pretend you're okay with things just to keep someone around. Start small. Start by getting honest with yourself. Start today. Thanks for tuning in to Unwind, the podcast that helps you get out of your head and back into your heart. If you loved this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who needs it. If you want to go deeper, you can get free immersive meditations at blairnicole.blog/unwind. You can explore online coaching programs at blairnicole.blog/coaching. And you can grab my book, 31 Days of Self-Compassion, on Amazon to start building a habit of self-compassion one day at a time. Everything I create is designed to help you remember you are enough and you already have everything you need within you to heal. Thanks for tuning in.